Welcome to the Career Kickstart Show. I am your host, Sammy Gardner, and we're going to be doing something a little different. Usually, I go on a season break in the summer since I'm usually busy traveling. Well, since I have gone from digital nomad to digital hermit, we're going to be rolling on straight to season 4. This first episode is all about how to work from a quarantine, work from home, extreme edition, and also to find remote work. Keep in mind, guys, this is originally a live stream. I did my best to edit out all the shout outs to listeners, and commentary to comments that might not sound all that great in a podcast, and I tried to take out as many ums as I could. As you can tell, some snuck in the permanent show notes at the Career Kickstart Academy website. You're going to find a list of the work from home resources that are referred to in this episode. So thanks again for listening, and I hope you do enjoy this very special episode of the Career Kickstart Show. Bye! Hey guys, it's me, Sammy here, and welcome to what I'm calling the Bathrobe Diaries. Today I'm going to be explaining remote work. Now, I did a video like this last week, in the good old days, before we found out that we were actually living in a young adult dystopian novel, but that was a lot of theoretical, talking a lot about, do companies like people who can do remote work? So with this one, the quarantine edition, now remote work isn't that theoretical. I have my bathrobe, I have my headband, I have my white wine because it's after 5 where I am. I wanted to give you guys a real look at the possibilities of quarantine life, and it can be pretty good, I'm just saying. It's all about reframing it. So now that remote work is something that maybe we all should be doing, I'll talk a little bit more about it. Now, if you look down at the resources, I've actually shared a bunch of stuff to make remote work, quarantine life, this, what they're calling the new normal, a little bit better. I have some stuff for you guys. There's a list of 3 recipes for good lunches, some fun stuff with Zoom, some business resources from Facebook. So for those of you guys who are furloughed or laid off, and want to start your own business, some things there for folks who just want to kind of learn a little bit. There's some courses, a virtual guide to museums and learning, homeschool lessons for those of you guys who have little ones at home that you want to keep, them educated in some fashion. A cool thing from Headspace, which is a mental health app, is that they have some free resources. And then I have some fun stuff like how to have a Netflix viewing party, free video games, and also the YMCA has some free fitness classes. So I shared that. So check that out. Now, so let's start with the first question, which is remote work the same as freelancing? Now, there is some similarities because you can do this in your bathrobe. The trick for that is always to keep the camera off in any meetings. But the difference between remote work and freelancing can actually be pretty big because one, it's kind of under the umbrella of remote work, but freelancing is where you're in many ways acting like a business owner, or you are working with a staffing agency. So if you just want traditional employment, and by that I mean where you're on a payroll, you work with one company, you're not worried about client generation at all, then you can actually find those positions. Even before Corona forced people to figure out what meeting could have been an email, there were still companies that were hiring remote. I know that for some people who have to start working remotely, this can be really kind of a change of pace. But yeah, remote work and freelancing are different. Those are 2 viable options for working from home, but they don't necessarily have to mean the same thing. If you don't want to get clients, if you don't want to have to own your own business, you don't need to work from home. one thing I'm going to say is big shout out to people who are first responders, medical professionals, nurses, doctors, the people who are dealing with this situation right now. The ones that are at work so we can stay home. Those people, thank you so much. And that also includes the delivery drivers, the grocery store people, the restaurant staff, the clerks at CVS, the poor folks at Costco who are watching people fight over toilet paper. I mean, those are folks who are really helping us get through this. So big shout outs to them. Those are jobs that cannot be done remotely, and I salute them for staying on the course. So with that being said, tip your delivery driver, okay? He's playing Russian roulette so you can get some pad thai, okay? So moving on from that little PSA. So next question is, how is looking for a remote job, and by that I mean permanent, full-time, and not freelance, how is that different from looking for an on-site job? Now, what you're going to find is the biggest difference in applying to remote work as opposed to a location-dependent job is that for remote jobs, personality does count for quite a bit. Keep in mind that for even before we learned the term social distancing, remote jobs were pretty coveted. So folks would just apply to a whole lot of jobs that maybe they weren't actually qualified for. So for anybody who listed a remote job, it took a lot to kind of go through a lot of generic applications, maybe some people who were just not qualified in any way, shape, or form, to find the folks who are really good. And the thing is that, and this could be a preference, it could be a bias, but for somebody who is going to most likely just meet you online and engage with you there, there's a lot of know, like, and trust that you want to build up in that application because they're still looking for culture fit in a remote job. So showcasing your personality in some way, whether that is taking the opportunity to send in a video cover letter, if that is like also sending in like a portfolio, or just writing a personalized, just regular cover letter, that can do a whole lot to show your personality and kind of make them kind of imagine you around the virtual water cooler, if you will go with me on that line of thought. Now, let's see. Another thing to think about when you are, looking for any sort of remote job is that you have to understand a lot of remote jobs are word of mouth. So networking with other remote workers is a good strategy. One thing to think about is right now there's a lot of people that are like digital nomads or other remote workers who have to stay at home. They already, like, with the digital nomad crowd, like, we can't travel, so we're all doing networking in our little nomad groups. One of the biggest ones is actually called the Lynn Digital Nomads, and they're doing virtual hangouts. Find a community like, a community of virtual assistants, or a community of, I don't know, online customer service providers or digital nomads, and try to do some networking there and just see what job leads might come up. I know in one of the groups that I'm in, somebody shared a list of, like, I think it was like 120 remote jobs right now. And there's always going to be someone who's going to be like, hey, we need a person. With that being said, when you are looking for remote jobs, it's not just word of mouth, which leads me to my next question, which is, how to find remote work. A little sip of that because quarantine, self-care. So, how to find that work. You can find remote jobs on job boards. You can, of course, do networking. Another thing to think about is that you can actually go directly to a company's page if you find out that that company provides remote work options. Those are some ways to find remote work. I will say that right now, and this is me, keep in mind, I'm always optimistic. I'm always going to say, you can do it, girl. But right now, you're going to want to modify your expectations, manage them if you can, when you are sending out applications right now. The markets are spooked in a lot of ways. There's going to be a lot of industries, I mean, the most obvious is travel and hospitality, that are affected by this crisis. And then when you think about retailers and non-essential goods, so if you are looking for remote jobs right now, one thing to think about is to kind of orient yourself to going for those essential industries. You're going to be able to find more opportunities there because hiring is probably going to slow in many ways for the, I guess, call them non-essential industries right now. However, they're still going to be hiring, even if their hiring process is slowed down, because let's face it, most companies right now are just scrambling to put in work from home policies. So even if hiring is slowed, they're still going to need people. And that means you can still apply. It might just take a while for them to get back to you. So that is my thing. Right now, don't get too emotionally attached or too, biting your nails because you're not hearing back from somebody. It's going to take a while to hear back from any application right now, unless you are working in, I know that grocery stores, healthcare, all those necessary industries are booming right now. However, for some other ones, they're going to be holding their breath, if you will. So let's see. The next question is, how likely is it that your geographic location will impact your chances of getting a remote job, and in what ways? Now, it can and it can't. Now, there are going to be some companies that are going to be pretty flexible with folks who are not doing customer-facing positions. So if you're somebody who's doing affiliate marketing, or you're a developer or something like that, you might not need to be in a specific time zone because your jobs can be done at any time. If you're having a customer-facing role, oftentimes they want you within maybe like 4 or 5 degrees of time zones just so you can actually work with the customers. It doesn't really matter if you're rural or in a city, oftentimes, especially right now, as long as you're in a time zone where it's convenient enough for everybody to meet with you for a call or a meeting or something like that, virtually, of course, you're gonna be fine. Of course, if you are in an area or a country where there's a lower cost of living, so example is if maybe you're in the Philippines, you might have someone try to lowball you a little bit. And I assume that maybe you're going to have to negotiate a little bit more or something like that. That's the only thing that right now I could see geographic location actually, impacting your job hunt. Now, let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of remote work. Now, obviously, the pros are that you get to self-isolate, aka introverts doing what they want to do. The other pros is that you have a flexible schedule, working from anywhere, time with family. I mean, we're all going to have an abundance of that depending on who you are quarantined with, and also working from home. However, there are some cons, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can kind of mitigate those. One of the cons is that it's hard to unplug from work. If you are not having like a commute, like you're getting on the subway or you're walking to work or you're driving, or you have some sort of like, okay, I have to be up at this hour, brush my teeth, do that, get on the metro and blah blah blah, then it's easy to not have that clear separation between work and home when you are not really moving around that much. A way to kind of deal with that issue is to build up some kind of routine. Give yourself a stopping point. One way that I find to like kind of help with that is to at least start out in the beginning of the day, like trying to do maybe a co-working session with somebody else. That could be as simple as just like turning on Skype and everybody, if you have a friend, just being like, hi, I'm going to work on this. Oh, you're going to work on that. And then just working together, for an hour. Because at least you have somebody else where you're like, oh, I'm like, that's what I did with my friend Rosanna today. So I knew I was going to see Rosanna, so I was like, okay, I need to maybe put on some real clothes, make sure that I'm like somewhat groomed and presentable, and, actually like have my like idea of what I'm going to do today, because I was going to be talking to her. So that's one way of giving yourself that kick in the morning and giving yourself a little bit of structure. Is just having a set time to start, checking in with a friend, and then having a hard stop point. So loneliness, that can be an issue. That's why it's so important to utilize resources like the ones that I put in my post, like doing a Netflix party with friends, having Zoom chats, just kind of getting out there virtually. I mean, even just going old school and actually making a phone call with somebody. These smartphones do more than just play on Facebook. So that's one way to combat that. Now, collaborating and communicating can be difficult. Yes, and that's why it's always good whether you're doing colleagues, or just maybe you're volunteering or whatever you're doing with your telework, to make sure that you kind of have a conversation with people on how you're going to communicate. Are you going to have a group Slack? Is it going to be email? Is there going to be a weekly meeting? Just get an idea of the parameters of when you should check in, when you're going to talk. You might not need to talk as much as you think. You'll find out that yes, the meme was right. There's certainly a lot of emails that could have been meetings, but if you already have in advance an idea of when you're going to talk to people, when you're going to reach out, and when you're going to leave people alone so they can have sort of a deep work time, that's going to make it a lot easier to connect, whether that is with your colleagues or creative partners, business partners, family, whatever. One of the things is distraction just at the home. I think that's going to be something that's going to be difficult for each family, depending on, or each household, depending on how it's made up. Like if you have little kids, it's hard to explain sometimes to them, but if you can kind of give yourself an area, even if it's something like right here, like I'm just in my bedroom. I'm not going to show you this side because you'll see that I don't necessarily always make my bed, and how I sleep, it looks like I just make a nest for myself every time, turning around 3 times like a dog, which I don't, but it looks like it. But I made this area just a corner where I can shut a door, I can be here, and that can help. Stake out your areas, give people your business times, and just let them know in advance if they forget. Like give them a 5-minute warning if you're going to do a meeting. Most of the time people are pretty considerate. Just give them a heads up. Staying motivated. Now that one can be hard, especially for people who are extroverts or folks who like working in the office. I would think that right now, as you're in this remote work life, one of the best things, especially for newcomers, is to start thinking about your day as just different outcomes. As opposed to planning your day by hours, think about a different outcome or a different thing that you're going to produce. So if you need to get through a bunch of emails or start on an audit or do a business plan or something, just give yourself some things to do on a to-do list, as opposed to just, I'm going to do this for this hour, that for that hour, because then you'll feel a little bit more accomplished as you go down the to-do list. Another thing is just to have other people that you can check in with. You can utilize a mastermind group with just some friends. You can have one of your coworkers be a remote work buddy, and that can help too. And yeah, so those are some of the cons. And and one thing to think about when you're thinking about what's a pro and what's a con, you can always reframe these things just a little bit. I think whenever we're kind of taken out of our pattern, it can make us feel kind of resentful, just because. This could be a time to kind of do something on your chore list that you've been meaning to do. Like I've been meaning to make a better area for myself, when I visit my parents. It was something which at my last place I was like, I'm always working on the bed. I should actually do a proper space for myself. I never did at my, place, my studio that I was staying in Brazil, because I had to leave rather quickly. But I was like, why not? Might as well do that here. So you can just kind of reframe some of these different cons and stuff like that, as something that can be a good thing. Like maybe not always be in the office can be good for you to do the deep work or the admin or the things that you were just needing to do, but you had too many meetings or something like that to really get into. So that's my suggestion there. My next question is, what specific skill set are the hiring managers looking for in a remote position? Now, this is a pretty good one. Keep in mind that, it's going to be the same sort of things that they'll want in any employee, but there are some things that do help you, some traits that people will, who have these traits will just do better in the role. Now, some of the traits that employers are looking for are people that make their own work. Now, that can be sometimes really difficult for people who are newly in a quarantine or self-isolation or work from home situation, and they're kind of used to getting directives from the group or just seeing things happen and getting things done. So right now, whether you're seeking remote work or you're in a remote job, it's really good to cultivate that skill of just making your own work. This is a good time to maybe do some project-based things that you haven't been able to do before. I have one friend who's actually, using some of this time to do some paid courses through her employer. So, just find things that you can get done and you can make work. Another trait that most companies that are remote they really want is someone who's going to be passionate. They want someone passionate about the organization and the organization's mission. And that's because a lot of remote companies, a lot of them are startups, so their founder is not that far away from the rank and file. A lot of these startups are passion projects as well. So they want to see that you are interested in this company, because think about it, a lot of people want to work remote. If you have people who are all equally talented, equally competent, you're going to go with that one who's just that much more excited about working there. And that's part of why customizing your application, including little details that show that you actually did a bit of research on the company, you're interested in it, those go a long way. Another trait companies are looking for is resourcefulness. They want somebody who can figure things out. If the whole company is spread around and maybe you're working at a time zone when other people are not around and there needs to be a decision or a thing done, can you solve the problem? That's what they're looking for. Another thing, of course, is tech savvy, which keep in mind you can build that skill. A lot of people have this tech phobia. They think they can't learn things, and that is just incorrect. There's a lot of tutorials on YouTube. You can build up tech savvy for sure. Another thing that employers are looking for in remote workers are people who are curious and inquisitive, people who can do time management, people who are focused, and folks who are producing impactful work without that much direction. So these are people who are self-starters or independent, but they can also be collaborative. So those are some of the traits that they're looking for. Keep in mind, these are all things that most people can cultivate. So don't feel intimidated by the idea of having to use all these different tech tools. And speaking of tools, here are some tools that you should know, learn, and love when working remotely or just keeping in contact remotely. One of the tools is called Slack. Now, Slack is this really kind of cool, little chat room style group that you can make. So with Slack, you can have people just sign up, join up, and you can make little channels for people to chat in. It's all text-based, and you can have pictures and stuff. A lot of companies are using Slack and just kind of using that instead of email. I've also seen people who are in fan communities or neighborhoods or just bands or something like that use Slack just to collaborate with the members as well. So Slack has a lot of purposes. Another tool is Trello. Trello is a productivity tool. Some people might be familiar with Asana, which is kind of similar, and those are just sort of task and project management tools where you can kind of say, oh, I need to do this, move it around, different stages of progress, tag other people, and assign work. So that's really helpful for folks who maybe they have a small team or they're trying to stay organized on a specific project. Another tool is just the whole Google suite. So, Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Hangouts, Google Drive, those are all great tools for collaboration and communication. They're also free. A tool that I personally love is Zoom. Now, right now, Zoom is actually, has expanded how they do their prices, and the free version is really good. I like it because it's just my own little chat video room. I can record things. I can have fancy backgrounds, and I just really like it a lot. I use it for business, and I can have my like I can set up like specific rooms for chatting and recurring meetings and all sorts of things. It's not necessary if you're just doing simple video calls. You can simply use Skype for that as well. But those are some top tools to know when it comes to working remotely. Now, an interesting question that I had in the last remote work chat that I did was one about if you can have a decrease in career movement if you have a remote job. That's kind of a common concern. I think even now maybe that might be in the back of people's heads even if they're asked to work from home. And no, you don't necessarily, take a hit in your career when you're not there in person to shake some hands and to go to cocktail hours and network. You just have to, in a lot of ways, utilize these collaboration tools to make those personal connections. Keep in mind that right now people are going to be understanding of, finding your feet, so it's not like you were exiled. So don't worry about your career chances decreasing with a remote job. You can still do the same kind of networking, the remote sphere. It just means that instead of talking around the water cooler, you're just talking more in Slack. My last question that I'm going to answer, unless I get another one, is what tools do you recommend having in your workspace, kind of your setup? Now, this is a good question because a lot of people think they need to have a whole lot of complicated things. This is just cheap headphones. I have recorded podcast episodes with this. I know that that is a shock to all the podcast gurus who want you to buy an expensive microphone, but you can do the same kind of chatting away, producing content with just simple headphones. You need a semi-quiet space if you are doing anything that requires calling people. Right now, keep in mind most people are probably figuring out their work areas too. I think everybody's going to understand if your kid or your dog or a cat or, I don't know, ferret if you got one, pop into the screen for a little bit or whatever. I think we're all dealing with the same thing. But ideally you have a place where you can concentrate a little bit. What I find really helpful when I am working from home is, unlike when I'm in an office where actually usually my offices when I'm on a location have a lived-in feel, I try to like remove as many distractions from my desk as I can. Like I try not to have knickknacks or whatever, because I want this area to be just ready for me to go. So I also will make sure before I'm done like using my computer for the night, I have, some tabs open so I can wake up, have my coffee, feel like a human, and then turn this on and it's right there. I don't have a Facebook. I don't have any of those things kind of bugging at me. Another thing that I would recommend, and I know this seems old school, remember paper? Paper can be really helpful, especially if you have to just plot out all the random stuff, because right now we're all stressed. We're all stressed. Let's be real. We all ended up in a Stephen King novel. This is the big plot twist. So sometimes writing it out still helps. This is also helpful for folks like if you're like me and sometimes in a video meeting you need something to do with your hands. Doodling, that can help you if you're a person who can listen better in person. I know that sometimes it can feel like in these meetings that you're just listening to a really boring podcast. Doodle. Another thing to think about with your workspace is that if you can, try to have an extra internet source. I actually have for all my communication tools, I have the phone version, the mobile version on here. This has saved my bacon so many times because what I do is if I need to take a Zoom call, the internet goes out, or it's really loud where my computer is, I can take this, plug in some headphones, go to the backyard, go into a closet if I have to, and be able to do that call. Sometimes you might find that Maybe your computer, if you have a PC like me, is just decided, hey, you were in the middle of something, but why don't I do an update? You can be on your phone, you can make that happen here. Also, if you have a hotspot capability, you can add some of that. Another tool, if you're in a pinch and there's a lot of people co-working at your house, is to use a VPN called Speedify. Now, Speedify is a tool that can actually bring together two Wi-Fi streams. So you can theoretically have your regular house Wi-Fi and your phone data going at the same time, combining to give you a little bit more strength. Another thing is that if you are lagging behind on a call or something like that, sometimes turning your video does help. So you don't really need too much. Of course, you'll want to have a decent enough chair. Some people like to do a standing desk situation. That can certainly be helpful. But don't worry about if you don't have oh, I don't have a webcam or this or that. I have a webcam right here, but I've done plenty of videos using the weird integrated camera, which for me on my Dell is right at the bottom. So it's the most unflattering. It's like the double chin boob vision, because how it is angled is that it just hits you right here in an unflattering manner, and if I don't angle it right, it just makes a double chin and then boobs. It's very strange. It's the most unflattering vision, but I can angle it right and look more or less not like a bunch of curves, bunch of rolls. Works out. Most people also, if your camera's not working or whatever, most people let you not have to do a video. Most people are going to be in weird lighting too, at flattering angles, trying to hope that nobody sees their clutter or their knickknacks or whatever stupid posters they still have from high school. Which, I mean, I'd angle my things, you'd see that, there's still. I rearranged the room at my parents' house because this is where I'm hunkering down. Because usually I do the digital nomad thing, Airbnbs, blah, 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 hostels, yada, 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 co-living. So my new co-living space is my parents' house. So I had to take my old room and try to make it a little bit less stuck in my childhood. So yeah, but sometimes you have to do that. Use the time that you save on your commute. I was just talking to my dad, and he figured out that he is saving at least 2 hours a day by not commuting to the university. This is a great time to maybe work on a project in the garden. I started working on cleaning my parents' garage, which of course made my dad realize that it was the threat of apocalypse to make us clean the garage. That's been a family project for years. So yeah, it's not ideal. I know that, the last remote work video I was talking about, yeah, let's do this, let's do that, and I was talking about going to Bansko and everything like that. It looks like things have changed. I talked at the beginning of this video a little bit about kind of what I see with the economy and the career field right now, kind of how job market is going to look for people. And you know what, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Everybody's going to need to manage their expectations. The markets are spooked, and we're going to be dealing with that for a while now. That does not mean that you just give up your job hunt if you're in the middle of one, if you just stop trying to change careers if you're trying to. It just means that right now you might see fewer open job leads than usual. Still apply to them. It might be a while before you hear back, but you will. You will. They're going to need to hire anyway, even if this goes on for longer than we think. But keep in mind that this is still a time for you to keep up career momentum in other ways. Now, that could be doing online networking. If you are somebody who's a graphic designer, this is a great time to do something like Daily UI Challenge and share that on LinkedIn. That can be something where you can spend, the next 15 days building like a different like graphic design project, sharing it on LinkedIn, tagging recruiters, things like that, that can boost up your visibility, add to your portfolio. You know, if you're somebody who has been wanting to take a course, this is a really good time to, you know, bunker down and focus on that course. So think about those sort of projects that you can do. Think about building your portfolio. If you're somebody who's always wanted to, you know, maybe sell stuff on Etsy or something like that, this is a good time to do all that crafting and get that store ready. There's a lot of things that you can do now to build momentum. You can still, for my extroverts, you can still network. You're just going to have to do it online. So just go on LinkedIn. I mean, if you haven't updated it for a while, this is a great project. Update your LinkedIn, start, you know, going around, talking to people, connecting, doing whatever. Like, you can still do all those things. In fact, I would say that for some of you folks who are really thinking about how do I take, you know, some sort of leadership role or influencer role in my industry, this is a good time to step up and like maybe host your own virtual events. If this is something where you're organizing like an industry summit and it got canceled, do it online. I mean, I was going to do a ladies business, you know, event in Bulgaria in July. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I still believe in the, you know, the power of women in business coming together, working together, collaborating, and synergy happens there. So I'm going to do it online. It might take a while to figure out how I can, you know, do that, but it's still something that I want to do. So for those of you guys, even the folks who have been laid off, I know that it's tough. I mean, I've dealt with that before with layoffs, cuts, furloughs, and it fucking blows. So I'm not here to tell you to like sprinkle some sugar on it, you know, and everything like that. It's not easy. Deal with your feelings on it however you do. Take a little bit of a breather if you can. And when you're ready to really figure out, you know, what you want to do for your next step, keep in mind there's going to still be plenty of options for you. You know, it might take some online networking, it might take some portfolio building. You know, maybe you might want to study up on something, but you can still have some career moves. There's still things that you can do. So enjoy your bathrobes, enjoy your snacks, enjoy your Netflix. Change your career, change your life at careerkickstartacademy.com.